Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to a friggin' hot day in Perth. And you join me at Pinjarra Bakery for Australia's best pies. Now, rolling in behind me is the Ioniq 5 by the remote. Now, this journey actually started earlier today. Locked. It's just noted on the car, so I can pull that out. Now these here tell me it's fully charged. I am using the emergency charger, which I do not recommend. That sucker will take 31 hours to charge the car. Now I can't get to the car, so I'm going to use its party trick to get it out. The range, which advertised 420 kilometers, is currently showing 322. Now I will do the caveat that I've been thoroughly enjoying this car, so I'm getting 20 kilowatt hours to 100, and you're supposed to get around like 10 or something, and I'm pretty sure that works it out by driving style, but obviously 320 as opposed to 420 is a very, very big difference, but we'll talk about that later on. So let's talk the Ioniq 5. 225 kilowatts, 605 Newton meters of torque sent to all four wheels via two motors. Now, advertised 0 to 100 is 5.3 seconds. Now, considering that this thing weighs 2.1 ton, GVM is 2.5, and that 0 to 100 is 100% true, is absolutely mind-blowing. Now, before we talk about price, whilst I'm at the front, we have to talk about the design. The aero I mentioned earlier is the bottom of the front bumper. These headlights, I personally think are absolutely stunning. Maybe it's because I'm from an older generation, who knows, but these rectangle headlights with their top chopped off, freaking stunning. This daytime running light just here is absolutely beautiful. I love the rest of the shape as well, as you saw earlier in the video. Now, all that does come at a price. Now, before I get into price, you have to remember that its competitors are the Model Y, the Model 3, and the Jaguar E-Pace, the one that everyone forgot about. This is 75 grand on road. Now, the caveat to that is that there's actually a big old waiting list for this. So the 2022 shipment has sold out, so you're not actually going to get one until next year. Chip business, supplier business, you know the deal, I don't have to explain it to you. Now, 75 grand might seem like a lot plus on roads, but don't forget, servicing $220 a year for the first 3 years. The fourth year, because they have to do something with the electric motors, is 800. The one after that, 220 bucks, etc. Just let that sink in for a minute. 220 bucks. I can barely service my Civic for 220 bucks a year myself. Just let that sink in for just a minute. And finally, one of the most exciting pieces of information about this particular car is that in 2024, there is going to be an N version. Now, whether that's going to be an N line or an N doesn't really matter, because the N line is still a fantastic addition to the range. If this, however, comes out as an N, like the i30N DCT that I drove, this thing is going to be freaking insane. Now, in this beautiful setting, we have to talk about this beautiful design. To me, I love it. It's very 1980s retro brick gaming console style, with these square LEDs forming these rectangular lights. The indicators are below, the reverse lights are just here, and the brake lights in the middle. Personally, I absolutely love the design. Now, the design runs through into the aero. So this spoiler here is actually a really stunning spoiler. Nice little scoop down here, which goes down to a completely flat back window with no rear wiper. So there's less obstructions for the aerodynamics. Now, talking of aerodynamics, we have the boot here. Now, I've already talked about the boot and how I'm not a particularly huge fan of it, but we'll have a look. So you can kind of see there, it's not particularly big, but I've already talked about it, so I'm not going to keep talking about it. Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this is a similar size to the Kona. It most definitely is not. 4.6 meters long, 1.8 meters wide, and the wheelbase is 3 meters, which is essentially the same as a Palisade, you know, the 7-seater, and is a very similar size to an Evoque. Now, on the side, whilst we're here, there's a couple of things we need to talk about. One is, I understand why they have to do this for range, even though the range is a complete lie in this thing, but there must be a better way to design wheels for economy, right? I mean, let's not go as bad as Tesla, but you've gone a bit far this way. However, what I do love is this line here is an exact design cue of what you see on the i30 sedan N line, if you have seen that video. Now, these handles here, if I lock them, they go away, so they're nice and smooth, and you can also touch that, which will unlock and bring them back out again. Of course, everything is you can do by the key. And what else you can do by the remote is open the charging port. Now, this reveals the elephant in the room, I guess you could call it. Now, as you saw earlier, the advertised range of 420 kilometers, when I got in this thing, it was 100% charged, and it only had 330 kilometers or whatever it said earlier on in the video. Now, we live in a country which is hot a lot. It's 37 today, so you're essentially using aircon 8 months of the year. Now, obviously, no matter what electrical draw you use will affect that range. Now, is it right to advertise it's 420 kilometers when I have never seen 420 kilometers? Now, could it also be, I also accept that it might be that I've had to charge it from my emergency charger, because obviously I don't have a charging port at home, which may also be affecting the range, because if like 20, 30 kilometers I could understand, right? But 100 kilometer difference, that's a big amount, and that is a huge issue for people. Even if you want this as a second car, that is a very big problem in a country and state as big as Western Australia. Now, the rear-wheel drive version does get slightly longer range by 30 kilometers. However, the saving grace to all of this is this sucker. Now, this I can plug in there, and I'll plug it into a wall charger if you have one at home, or a fast charger. Now, just below is your DC. So if you pull this out, you then have your DC. Now at a 350 kilowatt hour charger, this thing goes from 10% to 80% in 18 minutes, which is absolutely mind-blowing, and that is achieved because this is actually built on an 800 volt architecture. Now your Teslas, your Jaguars, etc. of the world are built on 400 volt architecture. Now what that also means is this can also charge within 5 minutes. You can add an extra 100 kilometers range. Now when you just let that sink in for a minute, you can literally pull into a servo, plug it in, go get a coffee, come out, and you've got an extra 100 Ks, which for the range anxiety induced folk of the world, like me, that is supremely helpful. Now if you were to plug it into a normal charger, 10% to 80% is about an hour. If you plug it into your home charger, now don't forget you do have to pay for a home charger, which is factor in an extra £2,000 for someone to come and install it. Now Hyundai do actually have installers that they can recommend, etc. That will take 6 hours to charge from 0 to 100. Just gone to the boot to get this optional accessory. I do want to stress this is optional, but actually super useful. So I can't remember the name, V2L, which is vehicle to load. Need to come up with a better name, Hyundai. Now, however, name aside, you plug this in here. Now that's actually locked in there, so you can't actually, well, it's when I lock the car, it's now locked in there, right? So you're probably thinking, that's a funny looking plug. Well, it's not a plug, it's actually a portable battery charger for anything that you want to plug in there. Like plug your phone, put an extension cable in there, run a 4-port on there, plug in a microwave, a kettle, a beer fridge, because we're in Australia and it's freaking hot. This is a super cool feature. Now you can actually set this to stop discharging at different levels, etc. From inside the car. And while we're talking about discharging, the other really awesome thing about this whole charging setup is that obviously in countries like Australia, or any country, you have on-peak and off-peak electric usage, right? Which usually means that about midnight the electricity gets cheaper. So in theory, you don't want this car charging before that if you're going to charge it overnight. So if you enter in a destination into the car, you can actually set a time for when this car will start charging and help on those electricity bills. And help with those road trips where you can use that feature. So it's finally time to drive it, but first, its other party piece. You come up to your charging port, you're like, oh, I've got to sit around for an hour. What on earth could I do? So what we're going to do is we're going to put it in relaxation mode. Now, bear in mind, I'm not touching anything here. You can also see that my legs come up. So now out of shot, I am now reclined position, leg supports coming up, and I can have a little nap. Now you're probably thinking, oh, that armrest looks really far away. You'd be correct. Just like that, you can chill out. And not forgetting that I can open this roof and look up into the stars, or right now it's daytime, so looking up into some trees. When you're done charging, press the button and you come back to reality and off you go. Right, so we've got to an RAC Charge Fox. Now these are the ones which in theory you should be able to charge it pretty damn quickly. So on your app, on the phone, download the Charge Fox app. I've literally just signed up while I've been stood here. It's took me all of 30 seconds. You then pick what one you want. There's both here. You got Type 2 and the older generation as well for the Teslas. Now because this is a DC, which is this sucker down here, we open this up, plug this in, it beeps, and then I hit start on the app. Now it says prepare your charging session. So it's charging my car. It's 45 cents per kilowatt hour. So obviously this is a 75 kilowatt hour battery. You can do the maths. So what we're going to do is we're going to let that charge for a little bit. So charging your car. All right, so it's charging now. So we'll have a look, and it's saying that it's going to be 38 minutes to 100%, and it's currently at 70%, and it's currently charging at 49 kilowatt hours, which is on the slower scale. So this is what you would get at home. Now from my one that I plug in the wall, that is 2 kilowatt hours, I think. You can see the difference. So we'll leave this charging now, and I can see how much it's charging, how much percent the thing has got. So I can go off, go do whatever I want, come back when it's ready. And then no one can pull this out either. So if I now lock the car with the key, which I can't find, do that. So now it's locked. No one's pulling that out now. You can go off and do your thing. Right, to the drive. I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet. Number one, this is not a sports car. Yes, it goes freaking hard. We'll never take that away from this car, but it's not a sports car. That's just a byproduct of EV cars in general. Almost any EV car will do that. The Kona electric I had did that. Yes, it teetered off a lot sooner than this one does. But electric cars have the luxury of just being absolutely incredible off the line, especially this all-wheel drive one. So we're in sport mode. We're going to pin it. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, it's like me leaning back. That's not me putting on a show. It pins you. 0 to 100 in 5.3 seconds is absolute bonkers. Now, obviously, it does affect your range just a little bit. So in sport mode, my range was 288 kilometers. I've just changed it to eco, and it's changed it to 306 range. Now I've mentioned a couple of times in this video that the range is not quite as advertised, which is true. However, it is because of the aircon. So if I have the EV menu up, you can actually see how much more range you get from turning off the aircon. However, we live in Australia. It's friggin' hot all the time. For 8-9 months of the year, you need aircon. So 420 kilometers, take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt. There's a driver only option for the aircon, which does give you a little bit more. We're talking like 20-30 Ks more, because the rear seats do have air conditioning, and the rear seats are also heated as well. But obviously that takes everything away from the battery. And finally, we are cruising along on a freeway in adaptive cruise control. I can turn the steering wheel lane keep assist on, but I've said this about other Hyundais. Hyundai just have not got it right. If I turn it on, rather than keeping the middle of the lane, it literally goes from left to right. It goes from the left-hand line to the right-hand line. The Genesis G80 did an absolutely fantastic job. You're the same company. Take the freaking software from the Genesis, put it in this, would be absolutely sweet. Adaptive cruise control is beautiful. It'll take you to a stop, press the OK button on the steering wheel, and it will waft you off again. And waft is the right word. The tyres on here are specific EV tyres. They have sound dampening inside the tyre. You do hear a little bit of road noise, but because you literally hear nothing, there's literally nothing. Like if I quiet. Nothing. No engine noise, no nothing. Like, you hear a slight hum when you floor it. So hearing road noise is kind of to be expected, in my opinion, in a 75 grand mid-level crossover, I guess you would call this. Seats are comfortable. I really enjoy the steering wheel, super comfortable. This one spoke design isn't quite as aggressive as the Genesis. Genesis are really... Really? Who's calling me? Thanks, Mum. I will call you back, Mum. So we're just pulling onto the freeway now. And the steering wheel, as I was saying, thanks, Mum. Genesis really owned that single spoke design. This is way more subtle, and the flat bottom is a really, really subtle touch. The interior feels really nice. There's really soft touch plastics everywhere. All the electrics are nice. My only complaint, I guess, from the interior is some of the climate controls are hidden away on the touch screen. So like the heated and cooled seats are behind another screen, which is kind of a bit annoying. Really enjoy the fact that there's a tactile and visible volume button. The amount of cars now which have that in the touch screen, infuriating. I can open this, look at the stars as I'm driving, well, not as I'm driving, because that's illegal, don't do that, guys and girls. But overall, I super enjoy this. The gear selector, which a few people have had a sad about, I love it. I think it's a good spot. I did keep hitting it to indicate at the beginning, but you get used to it in like a day. It's absolutely fine. And on that note, that is the drive of this car. Fantastic. It's not a sports car. It is a bit soft. It is ridiculously fast. Build quality is absolutely wonderful. The infotainment systems are good. They're responsive. Charging system is really good and will only get better as well. So from a driving point of view, freaking beautiful. Absolutely stunning car, and I can't remember what else I was supposed to talk about. Oh, stop. Come on, it's too hot to be fucking around, mate. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to a special episode of Joy Drive. You join me today with the car that is currently rolling into shot, or not. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to a very special episode of Technology can suck my dick. I have a toy which is following me. Why does it stop? This is going to take like 50 takes. It's turned off. Fuck, it's hot. Yeah, that must be the distance. Oh yeah, now it turns off.